Welcome to the ERP Seal podcast. My name is Tim Rodman, and we are live on July 3rd, 2026, with episode number 177. You can find related links for today's episode at the link on the screen there, erpseal.com/episode 177. And today we've got Mackenzie Cash, and we're going to be talking about automating browser-based ERP with AI. And before I let you introduce yourself, Mackenzie, this is going to be a no video episode. And I always like giving guests the option to not turn on their camera. I think I went the video route myself just because I felt pressured into doing it. Like that's what you're supposed to do. It does add, I think, engagement, keeps people a little more engaged. But I've also found, doing this for, I don't know how many years now, at least 5, that I actually find the conversations to be more in depth with the camera off. And I think a lot of it just has to do, at least for me personally, my brain's processing less and more focused on the conversation itself. So it seems to be less shallow. And Mackenzie opted for camera off. And I think in our introverted industry of accountants and computer developers who work on these mid-market ERP systems, that's totally not that unusual, especially in the accounting space. And so, no problem with the camera off. And so I matched that mode, and that's why you've got just some avatars on the screen there. So with that background, Mackenzie, I'll give you a chance to introduce yourself. I was like asking some background, maybe where you grew up, where you went to school, and how you landed in this world of mid-market ERP with Acumatica.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. So about me, I grew up in Oregon, and I still work there. I work for Floral Services. We're a company that makes like silk plants that you might see at Home Goods or TJ Maxx or Home Depot or whatever. We ship internationally. We're a pretty lean company for the amount of product we move. So it's pretty normal for employees to, wear many hats. So, I say I'm kind of the IT guy, but I'm often roped into various, disparate random one-off projects that every day is kind of an adventure. So with that kind of workflow, AI is especially helpful to kind of just have access to this essentially a knowledge base that can help me, guide me along the right path to getting something started that I'm not an expert in. And I'd like to talk to you today about, a particularly useful case where Claude AI like saved me hours upon hours of data entry work on a vendor's website.
Love it. And I love getting into geeky details on how people do stuff in the real world. So we're definitely going to dive into that. But I always like to force myself to spend an uncomfortable amount of time at the 50,000 foot level because I want to geek out
Okay.
right away. But I try to, intentionally push myself to stay 50,000 foot as long as possible. And so a couple things you said there. One, about the company you work for, you said it was called Floral Services. And it's funny because like,
Mhm.
I don't even know what you look like. We never had the camera on. I
Right.
didn't even know what company you work for. And the reason is you're on the Discord server. So the augforums.com site, I've moved that to read-only mode. I wrote up a
Mhm.
big old long blog post. It's the last blog post on the site at augforums.com/thank you. All the explanation of why I did it. But I have kept alive the Discord server that we started earlier this year. You can join that at augforums.com/discord. I'll even, let's see, I think I have it up on, oh yeah, here we go. Here's the thank you blog post. I'll put that on the screen, augforums.com/thank you. And then the Discord server, augforums.com/discord. So you're in the Discord server. And the thing about Discord, it's kind of like, for people who don't know it, it's sort of like a Microsoft Teams or Slack, but more for hobbyists. Although a lot of professional communities have moved over to it. And I think the biggest reason is you don't pay per user. And actually, I'm not paying anything for it yet, but eventually you could pay for the entire server to get some more functionality, and you don't have to pay by user. So it's I love it. It's been really fun to work with, and just perfect fit for having a community, even a professional one. But the thing about it is, like, everyone can have whatever screen name they want and whatever avatar they want, and so because of that, I wasn't even sure what company you work for. So, anyways, so
Yeah, Discord's
all that
very,
said,
very, yeah,
oh,
go
go
ahead.
yeah, go ahead, go ahead.
Discord was very gaming focused. I've been on it for years and years, and then COVID happened, and the communication software like just blew up as an industry, and now it's used by everyone. So I thought that's pretty cool.
So you were actually, so actually, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Here we
Yeah,
are, in the uncomfortable amount of time on just random things for geeking out. Like, I am
sure.
really interested in people's thoughts on this. The vibe that I go for, the
Mhm.
same vibe I went for on ogforums.com is like a Hawaiian shirt wearing slash at the bar conversations, not in the cubicle in the office style or vibe. And that's one thing I like about Discord, because I find that it sort of puts it in the hobby part of my brain. But I'm curious for you, as someone who's been on it for a while. I know it kind of grew up in the gaming community, and it's
Mhm.
now sort of expanding into the professional community space. What's the feel for you when you're on Discord versus a work tool? Like, does it feel like the hobby part of your brain? Is it a pleasant experience, or does it feel like work is now intruding on your hobby? Like, what's the vibe you get there?
I would absolutely say that the vibe is more laid back than something like Teams or Zoom or whatever. Um, it doesn't. I wouldn't say it feels like work is intruding on my hobby or whatever. Discord servers are pretty um, worlds in their own right. They're each server is very, very different depending on how they have it set up. So I think it's very convenient to be able to, when the utmost professionalism isn't necessarily required. You don't have to, I guess, pretend too much with Discord, if that makes sense.
No, I really like that feedback. Like, my biggest fear was on the intrusion part. So I like what you said, that already each Discord server, which is kind of like, what would you describe it? It's like its own area.
Yeah, its own
Um,
own little world.
and you already have the experience of each Discord server being its own world, and so it's not that bizarre that you've got this ogforums.com one talking about Acumatica as just its own little world.
Right, exactly.
Love that feedback, because that was kind of my fear. It's like, am I intruding on people's gaming space by putting it in Discord? So I'm glad to hear that, at least for you, it doesn't feel like that. And then when you're talking about, like, overall vibe, it sounds like it still does keep it in overall hobby mode. And I love your point about you don't feel like you have to pretend. That's totally the goal there. And I think for
Mhm.
me, the line that I draw is, it's either something I have to do versus something I want to do. And I definitely want the ogforums.com Discord community to be something that you want to do. Like, there's nothing in there that you have to do. There's nothing in there that's on your to-do list. That's for the work tools. And I don't know, are you getting that vibe so far?
Yeah, and Acumatica can be, intimidating at times for new users. So a casual environment with which to just, talk shop with, minimal pressure is a valuable asset, I think.
Love it. So yeah, let's keep that vibe going. It's definitely the vibe of, like, hey, if I want to help out, I can, but if I don't want to, I don't. I don't click into that world. I stay in my video game mode or whatever I want to be doing at the time.
Hmm.
But that's how we connected, and I think, if I remember right.
Yeah,
And so,
yeah.
anyways, I didn't even know you work for Floral Services, and so yeah, tell me more about that. You said silk plants. Like, I know what a fake plant kind of looks like. Tell me about the fake plant landscape. Is silk how everyone does it, or are there different ways of making fake plants?
Um, it's not always literally silk. There's different materials for different plants. Like I'm not really super sure of the exact, material sciences involved, but we've got our plants run the gamut from like small windowsill type things to like UV resistant outdoor plants to Christmas trees is a big one during the holidays. Um, so if you ever get like a fake Christmas tree from Costco or uh, TJX Home Goods, that sort of thing, there's a good chance it's us.
That's cool. Even you
Yeah.
said UV resistant. I didn't think about that. Like, yeah, something that doesn't
Yeah.
fade. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. If it's not treated, then it can deteriorate in the sunlight. So we have UV resistant plants that can actually be used outdoors, and they're weather resistant as well. And we've also expanded recently into candles as well, which is a fun adventure. Um,
That does seem like a nice adjacent category. That seems like that would pair well.
yeah, it's it works for us because a lot of it is like seasonal. Like we're very used to plants being highly seasonal, so we have to you know dance around that. So since candles, it's not exactly the most, it doesn't seem like the most immediately adjacent thing, but from like a warehousing and timing and like relationships with vendors perspective, it's actually kind of a natural fit.
And also in the sense that like people are doing plants in the summertime and they're doing candles in the wintertime, so they don't overlap in terms of their seasonality.
um Other than like specifically Christmas trees, we actually have pretty steady business with our plants, just because
Well, I guess because
there's
they're
always
indoor plants. Huh? I wasn't
yeah,
even
yeah,
thinking
yeah,
about that. That makes sense.
yep. A lot of them can be, you know, highly specialized seasons. Like we have generic seasons like, fall or, summer or whatever, but then seasonal can also mean like Valentine's Day or, 4th of July, a lot of uh, 4th of July decorations you might see um, outside the home. There's a chance it's from us anyway.
All right, I'm frantically scrambling here to get your website up. Okay, did I get this right? If I put this up on the screen, fsidecore.com. Is that the company website?
Yes.
Perfect. Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, I always like hearing the background of what people do because, and so the other point I like that you made is when you're in a smaller size company, you wear multiple hats, and
Yeah.
that can be fun, right? Like if you're in the big corporate environment, you've got very rigid structure around what it is you do, and it's a lot of times it's even physical structure, right? You've got that cubicle that
Mhm.
really draws the walls around where you sit and what you do. And I would argue, in general, you can make more money in the corporate environment, but it also
Mhm.
comes at the expense of like, I don't know, the tax that it puts on your brain, the amount of years that you
Yeah.
can put in. And so that's one thing I enjoy about this mid-market company space, which I loosely define as companies doing around 10 million a year to around 500 million a year. Kind of in that mid-market space, that's where these mid-market ERP systems focus, products like Acumatica. And yeah, I like those environments because you get to wear multiple hats. And then I love the point that you made there, which is when you're wearing multiple hats and you're not really like an expert, so quote quote, in any one area, that's where
Mhm.
I hadn't really even thought about this, but AI pairs really well with that because it completely strengthens your ability to uh, I don't think dabble is the right word, but really upskill in multiple areas when you're wearing multiple hats. Is that kind of what you're alluding to there?
Absolutely. Yeah. I the way you've described it is perfect. I love my job. I love how very different each week is from the last. It's whenever they involve me, it's usually because like some sort of problem or new thing needs to be set up, but then I also get to feel like the hero, so I'm fine with that too. But you know some one day
Yeah,
it's
I've
yeah.
experienced that as well in like those size businesses. Like, and I guess that's what I mean by the mental health side. Like even though you might not get paid as much as in the bigger corporate environment, it yeah, it's just more enjoyable. So it's interesting to hear you describe it that way. It sounds like you do enjoy that kind of a role, and even just the feeling of being able to be a hero, help out. There's just a good vibe that comes along with that and makes you want to get up and go to work every day.
Hmm. Yeah, sometimes it's, just printers, sometimes it's just telling people to restart their computer, but sometimes it's like leading an initiative to set up a new, vendor relationship, or like upload the relevant data and do some research as to what we need to gather. And a lot of it can be, feeling through the dark, not really know what you're doing, but it's like really important work that has to get done, and you're the one, expected to figure it out. And I love that kind of unpredictability.
So I could definitely see how AI, even just from a basic chat interface, which is, I'd say, still how I personally am mostly using it. Like it's just my new
Mhm.
Google search. It's my way to learn new information. And part of it, I think, is because I like learning stuff. And so I like the chat interface. But now more and more, especially since the beginning of the year, people are getting into just letting AI do stuff for them and putting it further and further from being something they interact with. And so, before we get to the part about talking about automating a web browser using AI, talking about some of the other things, like what got you into AI initially? Like, have you been doing it for years, or these LLMs? What kind of hooked you on starting to use them at work?
um I started using them a couple years ago, started with Chat GPT. I found it was like just a really good, uh I mean, AI was rougher back then, right? So it was it wasn't nearly as capable as it is now. But even then, it was a really good way to synthesize documentation, or just, start, just knowing where to start. It's back then I would have said the best thing about AI isn't even necessarily like its strict capabilities, but rather just it's a place where you can ask a stupid question and not be judged, too hard.
I like
And
that.
yeah, and actually, in a lot of it was with Acumatica, because I was new with Acumatica as well then. So um, I found AI was surprisingly good at just asking a simple question in plain English. How do I do this in Acumatica? And it would tell me, and it would be right like 90% of the time. And so it was a kind of a training tool. I don't want to say like training, but just like a I don't want to say replacement for documentation, because I don't want to like overstate the 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 capabilities at the time. But it was really, really convenient to be able to just be, totally lost. I know what I want out of Acumatica. I know it can do it, but the documentation is going over my head, or isn't laid out how I expect it. But because Acumatica wisely made their documentation very public, and of course it was, scraped by AI from the very beginning, AI was surprisingly proficient at just knowing basic functionality in Acumatica, and it's only gotten more capable since then.
So that's super interesting. I'm curious, the experience from your side. What's the difference? Describe the differences between when you have a question about something in Acumatica.
Mhm,
To me, you have multiple routes you could go, but the two I want you to compare are asking an LLM that question
mhm.
and working with the LLM to work through it versus getting on a call with your value added reseller or a consultant. Talk to me about the differences between those experiences and what would make you reach for one versus the other.
Well, I guess the two obvious differences are: one, the LLM doesn't cost nearly as much money, but also, feedback was a lot more immediate, and I felt like I had an easier time explaining in my own words. Um, our uh, Acumatica uh, on-call experts, they're very knowledgeable and proficient, and I liked working with them. Uh, but there's a charge for that for using their services, and sometimes you, it's not a good value to call them up for every single stupid question you have. That uh, if that makes sense, that's kind of the two big things is cost and uh, immediate feedback. And the other thing is with AI is you also control like conversation history. So if you're picking back up something, then you can just do that with AI, just continue where you left off. Whereas with a service, you might not always get the same person, or maybe it's been a week or two, so then you have to get them back up to speed.
That
Or
makes total
if
sense.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, that makes
or
total
it
sense.
yeah, or maybe you don't have 2 hours of con- of contiguous time to dedicate to solving the problem from beginning to end. The AI is very flexible with its timing, in a way that a human can't really be.
The biggest complaint I'll hear from customers related to consultants is the 15-minute bill. So I think most
Hmm.
consultants, I would say most still bill their time.
Hmm.
And you're not going to bill down to the minute level because that's way too complicated. So most people will take it down to the 15-minute level, and they'll do 15, 30, 45, 60. They're going to round to one of those four blocks within the hour. And the biggest complaint I'll hear is, I just send them an email on a simple question and I get a bill for 15 minutes, right? And I
Yep.
think the LLMs really help to address those kinds of things, because the consultants don't want to deal with that stuff anyways. Like you're having to change gears and you think it's a simple question, but they still had to go research something. Like
Hmm.
they might not have it right off the top of their head. It's more off the top of their head than it is for you, but it's still their time and that's how they get paid. So they have to do something there, right? But that's the
Yep.
biggest complaint I've heard. And so I like how the LLM, I think, comes in and addresses those types of questions and gets you from what I would call like small letter A to small letter B, like point A to point B, but it's small letter A to small letter B. And then I
Hmm.
think consultants still have a role where you need to get from big letter A to big letter B. Like there's a bigger chasm in between the two. And it's not, some people might say that LLMs get to the point where they completely replace consultants. Maybe, although I think a lot of what consultants do is just like managing human emotion and like just non-logical stuff that they have to deal with.
Hmm.
I think there's still a role, but it's very fascinating to me to watch how things are evolving. And I think the consultants, my opinion, that lean into LLMs instead of like trying to fight them are going to be better off, because then now you're just kind of, you just lean into the LLM, like let someone do what as much as they can in the LLM, even enable them to do as much as they can into the LLM. And then you're going to find as a consultant where your real value add is, because the more you lean into it, the more you discover where the gaps are. Like, do you think that's the case, or do you really think it's heading toward a world where LLMs just completely replace the consultants? What's your experience been so far?
I mean, it probably won't reach a point where consultants are completely replaced. I think more realistically, it's as you said, the consultants themselves are going to adopt more AI tools to help manage some of the the tasks which are now going to be proportionally more complex, because all the easier stuff is going to be taken care with the company's own LLMs, right? So and they're actually, just off the top of my head, there are unique ways that a consultant could leverage in AI to assist a company that the company themselves may not be able to, um like AI could read ticket history and like immediately know, oh, this other company also had this exact same problem. I bet it's the exact same solution. Kind of like a consultant already can, but just much more responsive, um, and and not necessarily quite as sensitive to like employees leaving or and taking their you know random tribal knowledge with them.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. So what I hear there is the consultants that really lean into the LLMs, which I think is the way to go. You're now not just coming to someone and offering the brains of the humans that work for your consulting company, but you're now able to offer them your own proprietary LLM brain as well. I love that. That has learned from the context of all the clients you've worked with. And that's really, really valuable.
Mhm.
How exactly you pull that off, especially when it comes to things like sensitive data, I don't know, but it's fascinating. And I know several of ours that are really leaning into this stuff, and it's I think it's fun times building it out, figuring it out. But yeah, I think it's a great point. Like when you hire a service to do something, a lot of it is you're accessing knowledge, right? And now
Mhm.
the LLMs exponentially increase the knowledge that the consulting company can bring to the table. So yeah, I love that. That's super interesting.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how various companies adapt and find, unique innovations that applies, specifically to their business. I'm sure the craziest stuff is things that like we probably won't even think of until it's already here, and then in retrospect we'll go, oh, that was an obvious use case, but
So
we just
true.
won't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So true. So true. So that's cool. So it sounds like you started off by using it, just to help answer your questions. I love that. How you said it's
Mhm.
like a no judgment way to ask questions. You're not going to feel like uh, you're dumb for asking it. Also, you're not having to pay to ask dumb questions, or you're paying super small token cost, right? So it's pretty much
Right. Yeah.
immaterial.
Yeah.
And so you started there, but now you've moved into starting to use AI to automate stuff. And um, it was super interesting to hear the use case where you're using it to automate browser-based stuff. Now, if I remember correctly, you didn't start off automating Acumatica. So maybe let's start with
Yeah.
where you started off. But you went into the world of using AI to automate the browser. And
Yeah. So before
yeah, talk
before
to me where
that
you started from.
even, yeah. So before that even, I would use it a lot for Excel, and both like in general knowledge stuff, just using Excel normally, but also having it make macros that can automate either very repeatable but like hyper company specific tasks, or really big tasks that only needed to be done once but just couldn't be done with just normal Excel, or at least not with the Excel capabilities I possess anyway. But so
Do you have
we
an
have this.
example of one of those?
Yeah.
Like, give us a
Yeah.
real
So
world use case.
so there's this, we have like an X reference table for EDI, and uh there's this unique problem we have with this one customer where um the file's too big. So the web portal doesn't actually has a file size upload limit. So I need to split it and then rearrange it so that it's in the acceptable format, and then upload each file separately. But when I download the file initially, it always merges it. And it's not a huge deal or whatever, but it's something I would do every day, and it was a huge pain to do it every single time. So I just had it program an Excel macro that, you know, uh, literally adds a button that when clicked will save the file in the same spot, but with, appended with part one, part two, and it would have the first half of the file and the second half of the file with the headers copied over. So that's a pretty straightforward case. Um,
And so
but
how much, like if you were to do that manually, was this like a 5 minute job or a 1 minute job if you did it manually?
if I did it manually, this one would be, I'd say like 2 or 3 minutes. So, not
So
the
yeah, not a
biggest
ton of
deal, but
time.
it's
But
but
to me,
it's
the huge thing is like
twice a
there
day.
are
Yeah.
hundreds of these kind of tasks, right? And when you're in the mode of all day long, just switching between 2 minute jobs, like it feels completely cluttered in your brain. One, you're not adding a lot of value, and like you just get lost in the details when you're doing this kind of stuff, right? And so it
Yep.
doesn't surprise me for you to say 2 minutes, but there are hundreds of these kinds of tasks, and when you get all those out of your brain and get them automated, like talk to me about the the psychological impact on you personally when you don't have to do that 2-minute task anymore?
Yeah. I started with that example because it's very simple, but I have some meatier examples. So we have this. Uh, I, ha- I had it started making like Python scripts to automate some like truly horrific tasks. Like we had this one vendor where they require us to email PDFs for invoices, and one day we started getting rejection notices because um, they now required the invoice number to be the name of the file, and they wouldn't accept it otherwise, which I thought was really weird. And these invoices were like already late, and I wanted to get the to it is get them to them as soon as possible. Um, and I this was like before I was really working with Acumatica like super closely. Um, so all I was given was like the files themselves, right? So I'd have, a folder of like 200 PDFs, all with uh, just random string for a name, and I need to change the file name to match the invoice number. And I asked, hey, is this possible to do with something like a Python script? And it's like, yep, we can do it like this. Can you give me an example? And I upload an example. It's like, yeah, it's the first thing. So it would be trivial to run a Python script, just download this library. And yeah, I was super impressed because it got it in one. It made a Python script that would go into the file I specified and rename every single PDF to be the actual invoice number. And that and it was a one-time only thing because now I know that you can change the rules in Acumatica to match requirements, to begin with, but it saved me like an hour of tedious manual typing and or copy pasting, invoice numbers.
I'm curious on that. So I've been pushing myself to have AI build Python scripts. I'm
Mhm.
curious, did you just run it from your local machine in a Windows environment, like via PowerShell, or how'd you run those scripts?
Um, it's just I, I just run it through I think like Visual Studio. Um,
Okay, but you
yeah,
ran it locally, like on your
yeah,
machine,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah, exactly,
Um,
yeah.
and then I'm also curious. It sounds like you were actually extracting the invoice number out of the text of the PDF document
Yep, extracting it from the headers of the PDF document and then resaving it with that invoice name.
and doing it entirely with Python. So there was some Python library that it chose to OCR the document and figure out where the invoice number was on the document.
Yep.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I was
And
I the thing I was really impressed by that one specifically because it like got it in one, right? Like that usually with more complex tasks you have to like, go back and forth a bit to really understand what you mean. But in that case, it was super straightforward and it saved me like an hour just instantly.
and so in both of your examples that you've given so far, one's building an Excel macro, so like just having it write VBA code in Excel, is that right?
Yep.
And then the second one is Python code. So in both of
Hmm.
those examples, you're using the LLM to write code, but then once the code is written, the LLM is not involved anymore, right? It's what
Correct.
people
Yeah.
would call deterministic logic in traditional computer code.
Exactly. Yeah.
But you're using the LLM, which is considered probabilistic logic, to actually
Hmm.
write the computer code.
Yep. And
Love that. Love
you
that.
always that it is like you said not deterministic, so there is some minimum threshold of knowledge you need to you know understand at least that it's doing the thing you want properly, so it's it's not a uh total wholesale replacement of your brain or whatever, but it was a very handy tool that let me punch above my weight in terms of you know because I don't have any background in Python coding like whatsoever. So it
I love
but
that.
this AI, yeah,
Yep,
you know,
me neither, but I'm having it write all this Python
yeah,
code for me.
yeah. It- minor anxiety. I don't want to come across as like, celebrating anti-intellectualism or whatever, but it was very convenient, when I was in my cubicle to not have to sit down and manually copy paste hundreds of, invoice codes or go, learn Python just to fix it. That was actually kind of what I resigned myself to do initially. It's like I decided, oh, I should probably like it would probably be faster to like develop a script that would do this for me than it would be to actually do this. And then I thought, I bet AI could do that. I know it can code. So, and then it not only did that, it did it the first try. So I was very impressed.
Love it. So yeah, what other examples you got? Keep walking me towards the browser automation. Yeah, it sounds like you're getting hooked more and more as you keep doing different use cases. Yeah, keep
Um,
walking me in that direction.
okay, so the another more complicated Python script I have. So when we receive like purchase orders from companies, we have an X reference table that has expected prices, and then the customer sends what they think the price should be. And in ideal world, 99% of the time those should match, right? And if they don't match, then we get an email from like a report from our EDI vendor that, hey, there's a price mismatch. You might want to double check the PO, make sure you're not, you know, selling it for less than you think or whatever. Um, and this EDI website is, it it can be difficult to parse large quantities of information this way when they're just sent to you in like very basic emails, and it requires a lot of manual like sorting to keep on top of, so if you ever had, a problem like systemically and then you get 300 emails an hour for 3 hours, then it can be a lot. And it's not even like an Excel attachment or whatever. It's just an HTML email with, graphics saying, "Hey, this item is off from your expected price by this much," and it's pretty looking for one instance. But if you have like 300, then it's a real problem. So uh, this was, a total shot in the dark. But I'm like, can we have AI like parse my emails and check if and just come up with a master report of all unresolved like EDI issues, And so that ended up being actually two different projects. One of them, basically, I had it AI develop an app that you have to like register on, Office 365, and you would log in, it would read your email, just the EDI folder that you specifically named, and it would consolidate all the price mismatch reports into a readable, executive overview, and or more uh, that is more of an actionable list of problems that you need to address. And that was super convenient because now when because I was previously just manually assembling them in Excel for my boss. He's like, okay, what problems do we have? And then I don't even he doesn't even ask me to do it anymore because I actually eventually converted it to an exe that lives on SharePoint, and then now he can just run it whenever he wants. Um, so and then the other
Wait,
sort of
before you go there,
related. Oh yeah,
I got
go
a
ahead.
bunch of questions because I love this technique. Have wanted to do it myself, but haven't because I just
Mhm,
think there are tons of applications of this technique. So,
mhm.
first, it sounds like you did it based off of a folder. I love that, so that you're still controlling what goes into the folder, and the Python app is only reading from that folder in your email. Is that correct?
Yep. A lot of AI. LLMs have like an option to like connect your entire Gmail account or whatever, and that's not what I really wanted, because I wasn't sure at the time, like, if how much it's reading my data or what gets done with it. So I wanted a solution again where the AI helps me develop a permanent and deterministic solution. And in this case, it's a just an executable that uh, that you log in, and then using the normal, like, Office 365 two-factor authentication, portal, and then you have it set up so that it's all your in Outlook. You have your price mismatch goes to a specific folder, and it only reads that folder, and it goes back 12 months or whatever by default, and then spits out a report, and it tells you in very unambiguous terms, these are the problems you need to address. If I
And
wanted
so,
to, I could have had it like delete emails that were like checked off or whatever, but I just wanted to keep it simple. Like, this is a report maker. Click the button, you'll get a report in 30 seconds.
and so when you set up the authentication into your email, is it the app registration area of Azure that you did that in?
Yeah, or let me see.
Because I've done that with Power BI, and so I'm familiar with that area. Like you get back a client ID and a
Yeah,
client
yeah,
secret, and then you
exactly.
tell it what it can access, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And so then I'm
Yeah.
curious there, when you set that up, do you get the option to only give it access to the specific folder in your email? Do you
Um,
remember on that?
I'm not sure if
It's
I
all right if
did
you
it
don't
that
remember.
way.
I
Yeah,
like pestering detailed questions like this because it's
yeah.
one
No,
what
no, that's
like yeah, sorry, good.
yeah. Let me see if I could like look at it really quick. But
Yeah,
I
pull it up.
don't think, yeah, I don't think the restriction to look at just that one folder was in the, like, at the Office 365 level or the Exchange Admin Center or whatever. But um,
So it would have been in the Python code itself.
right, right.
Okay.
But it's
And
not
actually, the more
like
I think about it, it's sort of because I think there is a concern with connecting an LLM to your email address because the
right,
LLM can do unpredictable things. But the more I think
right,
about it, in this case, you didn't really do that. You used the LLM to
right,
write a
right.
Python script, so you still are getting traditional deterministic code. So you
Yeah,
can rely
exactly.
on it only looking at that folder. Okay, that makes sense.
Exactly. Yeah, that
You
that's
didn't need to bake it in or
specifically
something.
what I wanted to avoid. You probably, like, they're pretty capable these days. You probably could, use the widget that Claude and no doubt, OpenAI is pushing, where you connect to your Outlook, and then you can ask it questions and it'll read your whole email for you or whatever. But that was kind of a privacy unknown to me that I wasn't willing to just unilaterally make for my company. So and why do that and recur this, repeat operating costs of, getting an LLM involved, when I can just make a one-time, permanent solution that won't, you know, change just because, the model updated, or, who knows what.
Yeah, sure. No, that's totally reasonable.
Yeah.
Um, and so then you also, yeah, and I think to your point, it's moving so fast, right? We might get to the
Yeah.
point where no one cares about these Python scripts anymore, and they just keep they just
Yeah.
let the Claude do it all for them. But I'm still in the Python world myself. But so then you said you wrapped it up into an exe and deployed it on SharePoint. So was it basically you just put an exe wrapper around your Python code?
Um, I've never, like, I had like some coding background, but I've never like made an exe before. So this is more, I really leaned on the AI to help me. But basically, it downloaded a, from a repository, just a tool that converts it to an exe somehow. And I verified it worked, and it did. So that's all the insight I've got on that aspect of it.
That's all you need. Yeah. But
Yeah.
so basically the logic is in Python, then you wrap it in an exe, and then what was the reason for deploying it on SharePoint? Is just so there's a web address for it, and then you're just clicking a button.
Well, not everyone who would potentially use it is super tech literate, so it was important for this particular case to make it just work in a single click with absolutely no, you know, no command dialog boxes or terminal anything. You just click it and it gives you the report they're looking for.
No, I'm totally with you. I'm super
Yeah.
interested in this because like when I'm having it write Python scripts, my least favorite thing about it is that now they're living in folders and I run them with command line and I just want a
Mhm.
button. So I didn't know you
Yeah.
could do this. So you wrap it in an exe, and I didn't know an exe could run within SharePoint. Like, are you talking about the regular SharePoint that comes with your standard Office 365 license?
Yep. And it bundles all because that's the other thing is I also didn't want to download Python on users that otherwise have
Exactly. It's
no
too
no
much of
business
a
having.
barrier,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yeah. And what if and I just think it's like, oh great, I don't want to remote troubleshoot this either. So it's like, what, it says I'm missing a library, what does that mean? Is like, it's not huge problems, but why deal with them at all when you can just make it an exe and then it's a single button that they can click and get the report they want, and they don't have to think about it and they don't have to troubleshoot it as nearly as much. Just and yeah. So it does work straight out of SharePoint because all it does, because it's very portable when it's just an exe, right? So there's no it doesn't need to look up a bunch of other files or anything. So it works just fine with SharePoint.
Yeah, I didn't even know you could do that. I didn't know you could run an exe on the SharePoint cloud architecture. That's super interesting. I'm gonna
Yeah.
have to
So
look
well,
into that. You don't have a
yeah.
screenshot of that you could like get together in the next few minutes, do you? Where that setup area is. I'm just curious of like the general place of where you go to set that up.
Like the executable, or
The
because
where you go to deploy the executable into SharePoint as a button. That's the part I didn't know you could do.
oh no, it's just Windows Explorer. So it doesn't look any different from any other executable. It just so happens that uh, it's backed up on SharePoint and can be downloaded from a web browser with SharePoint if they weren't logged
Oh,
in.
okay, that makes more sense. So it is
Yeah.
still running locally on their computer.
Yes.
Okay, I got you.
Yeah.
I got you. Okay.
I see where I may have slightly misled you there, but
No, I
no,
was getting
it's
excited because I was like, oh,
yeah.
you got an easy way to deploy Python into a cloud environment with a button. Because I'm still missing like the easy way to do that, where I could,
Mhm.
yeah, okay, I got you.
No,
Okay.
I convert it to an exe and then I moved it into a folder that someone else has access to, and then they see it instantly and they click it. And because it's, when you open something in SharePoint, it downloads it, but because it's a perfectly portable executable, then by clicking it and downloading it, they now have everything they need and it just works.
I would love if you're able to do this, if you just recorded a short little video, no audio, of what that looks like when you launch it and like where you go in SharePoint and then how you launch it. I'd love to see that. Like I would put it on the episode related links. No pressure there, but
Okay.
if you're able
Yeah.
to just do a quick screen recording, I'd love to
Yeah.
see what that looks like from the user perspective.
Yeah. Just right after the show, or right now?
No, you can do it anytime after. Yeah, I'll add it to the
Okay.
related links. But
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah. It's visually it's not that much. It's just a command box, terminal box that pops up and explains what it's doing, and then it closes. and
Yeah, it's
and
super
it,
simple,
it-
right? I have no idea what it looks like. I'm
yeah,
curious about it.
yeah.
Yeah,
No, I'll definitely get that too. Yeah, it's very
that'd
straightforward.
be awesome. All right, so you've now got Python scripts that you're wrapping up in an exe, deploying for other people to run, and
Mhm.
I guess should we jump a quick time check? Do you have a hard stop at the top of the hour? Are you able to go over a little bit?
No, I have no other commitments today.
All right. Well, I don't want to soak up too much of your time, but good to know we can go over a little bit.
But yeah,
Maybe let's jump into the browser automation part of it. So yeah, talk to me about
yeah.
that, please.
Okay, so basically for one of our customers, we have to, upload details about items to their portal so that, their warehouses can order them, right? And we're kind of, I guess, the guinea pigs of a brand new portal that is missing some important functionality, to be honest. And it's a even by manual data entry standards, it is not a, a pleasant website to use. Um, there's all sorts of problems, like any given field, there's like a 5% chance it just won't save, so that when you hit submit, it'll say there's an error, then you have to go back into the tab and try again. If it's part of a calculated field, so like dimensions has like a calculated cubic feet that automatically enters for you. But if it's anything like that, then it won't accept copy paste at all. So you're literally hand keying dimensions for items. Um, and then there's like pop-ups and nested pop-ups and tabs within nested pages with pop-ups. So the flow chart is a bit unintuitive. It's very slow. If you enter data too fast, then what you previously entered won't get saved. So there's literally a speed limit for entering data. It is it's truly miserable, to be honest. Um,
And
so
before
and
you tell me more about it, I just want to add what you reminded me of is I remember during COVID,
mhm,
there were news headlines about there was a huge demand for what language? Fortran developers. And so,
Fortran,
when
yeah.
people hear like people who are not involved in enterprises and they hear stuff like this, they're like, no way, that must be like the only example in the world where there's some old antiquated software like that. Well, not the
Mm,
case. It's all over the place. And so in COVID, it was making headlines because you had all of these municipalities, counties, cities, etc., that were having to now process massive amounts of unemployment and stuff like that, right? And so
mm,
their systems were breaking, and they needed people to help them scale up to the demand. And why were Fortran developers now in demand? Well, one, because there aren't many people around who still know Fortran, but the systems that these municipalities were running on were still like 1970 systems, right? And so
mhm,
it was just a great reminder to me that even though all the stuff that gets talked about is cloud and now it's all about AI agents and all that,
mhm.
it takes the enterprise world decades to catch up to new technology. And so,
Yep.
anyways, wait, the,
Yeah.
the the example you're talking about is not unusual at all. So yeah, sorry,
Yeah.
I'll let you go.
Yeah. In fact, the impetus for the creation of the website is because the previous website was even more antiquated. It was more feature complete and less buggy, but way more antiquated. The website looked straight out of, 2004. Just text boxes and black text on white background, and that's it.
Not unusual at
Um,
all. Yeah. So you
yeah.
got this super annoying thing to work with, and I
Yes.
I didn't actually know it was going to be that uh, difficult of a front end, but somehow you found a way to automate it.
Yeah. So I was just absolutely sick of entering it. Well, actually, worse than that, like I wasn't going to meet my deadline working on it, like overtime. So, um, so I thought, gee, it would be it's like I have the information, like when I first started manually entering it, of course, I rearranged that. I put all the information I need in a single Excel spreadsheet, and I arranged the headers in the order that I enter it in the website so that I could just enter everything sequentially because that made sense to me. And then I was thinking, can't like some robot just enter this for me? Like, how complicated would it be really to just have it manually type exactly what I'm doing and click the right spots and uh, appropriately wait 10 seconds between each field so that it for sure saves. the previous entry, and then I could just go make a sandwich or something and come back. And 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 the other fun thing about this website is, this customer technically reserves the right to, fine $1,000 for each incorrect data entry point. They've never actually done that, but they
Whoa.
yeah,
This
they
must
they've
be a
never
big, don't say the name, but this must be a big
yeah,
company.
this is a big company. Yes,
Okay. All right. All right. All right.
you've definitely heard of them. Um, and they've never actually done that. They've been great. And actually, one of the nicer things about this workflow over the old one is it's actual like local people handling everything. So it's not all bad. And they're the frontline workers on customer support, like they're just as frustrated with with all the nonsense as well. But anyway, I bring it up because like there's theoretically high consequences for getting it wrong. And once you submit an item, there is absolutely no way to claw it back without opening a ticket. And because the tools on their end are also kind of limited and buggy, the remedy is virtually always delete the item and start over. Which, if it's already at that point, then might result in product delays. So that's not an ideal solution. Um, so anyway, we have this website. We need to enter a bunch of data. I have the data. I have it ordered in the order it needs to be entered already. So why not just have a tool that enters it one at a time? And I was initially thinking, when I started asking Claude, in this case, what they think the best way to go about it, I was initially thinking something like auto hotkey, like something that would literally, control your mouse and keyboard, um, and like go through the website. But it actually suggested a TamperMonkey, like a browser extension that I've actually used before, in in like some sort of I don't remember, but it was I was familiar with it. I've used it before for like automating some like Reddit related scripts. I don't remember the details of that, but I'm like, oh yeah, TamperMonkey, that might be an option. And then once again, I was just completely shocked at how easy and how effective it was. Not literally in the first shot this time, but pretty close. Like the key takeaway here is it was faster. It was several times faster to develop this browser extension, or develop a script for this browser extension to do my work for me, than it was to do the work itself just once. Like it already saved
Wow.
time in a single upload, and everything after since then has been extra. So now
That
might
is
be a good time to,
fascinating
yeah, now might be
because
a good
it's
time to
always,
show the screenshot. Yeah.
you've always had to measure, like, how many times this is going to be used if it's worth automating. And so that's a huge statement for you to make right there. Just in
Yeah.
one, for the first run, it was already faster. That's super
Yep.
interesting.
Yep. It's kind of wild actually. So because um so it was built in steps, right? So at first I was not even expecting it to do the whole thing. I was thinking, what if I told it, this is page one, you enter this, and then it does that, and then I click a button or something, and then it would go to the next page, and then I could click the button again, and it would enter, the next line. And I thought I might have to like reorder my input data to be more, friendly somehow. But um, and the first thing that surprised me is like it. You might want to put the screenshot up. So in the yeah, there it is. So you can see the app it made in kind of the lower right hand corner. That's not part of the website. That's the tool, right? So the idea being, you just click the button, it knows what step it's on, and it can see uh, it's loaded a Excel file, and you click the button that says execute, and then it remembers what step it's on, and it enters that data in that field. It knows step one, that's the height dimension or whatever, and then step two, that's the width. Step three, that's the weight. And over time, um, and I thought it was just going to be the most tedious elements like height, weight, width, internet description, whatever. Because some of the fields are kind of complicated to enter. Like there's one that's like a date, but you can't type the date. You have to click it like a button, and it opens up a pop-up with a calendar, and you have to click the date manually. And that's the only way to do it. So I thought, oh, that might be kind of hard. And I asked, hey, there's this date selector, but you can't type. Can we have that always be today? Can you click today on that? And it said, yeah, can you open the console and just like paste the, you know, essentially paste the website so I can see what it looks like? And I do that. It's like, oh yeah, that's easy. And then that was a problem solved from then on. It's like I didn't have to click the date anymore. And then I go to the next page. It's like, hey, can you like dynamically click this button depending on how many sub items this case has? It's like, yeah, that's easy. I can do that. And then that was just another manual entry that I didn't have to do anymore. And then there was this one, the final boss of, weird inputs. There is at the very end, there is a drop down that each individual drop down is also a checkbox along with like a check all, and the final entry of the drop down is the submit button, and you have to click that for all of your previous selections to actually count. So I thought, well, maybe that might be kind of difficult, but no, I pasted, it asked for a certain, actually in that case, it gave me a test to run in the console of the web browser. It said, hey, give me this, run this in the, F12, run it in your browser, and that will tell me what I need to know to automate this section. And I did it, and it works. And now I don't have to click that. And basically, I ended up piecemeal developing a little, app that lives in the website that I just click one after another, and it enters each field exactly where it needs to go. And it has like built-in timers because different more complicated fields you have to wait longer before it'll actually save. And so it has a progress bar at the bottom that counts up, that shows you like when it's going to execute the next action. And then eventually, if you click the execute button, it does the one step. But then I added the run button, which will do an entire page at a time. Um, so
Wait,
in
before you tell me more, I
yeah,
got a few questions. One,
yeah,
super fascinating.
yeah.
Two, when you're kind of iterating through this and you're saying you asked it to, handle the date field and the other things, are you
Mhm.
interacting here with Claude Chat, Claude Cowork, Claude Code? What were you interacting with?
This is just Claude Chat.
Claude Chat.
So
Okay, so your
yeah.
basic chat interface, and then your
Mhm.
TamperMonkey is a browser plugin, right?
Yep, it was on the Google Play Store,
Okay.
and it allows you to run like user scripts. And so what we were doing was I was using the LLM to develop a script that TamperMonkey uses to essentially inject this auto stepper into this website.
And then is chat just coming back with TamperMonkey code every time, and then you're copying and pasting that into the browser extension every time?
Yep,
Okay.
exactly.
And then the thing we see in the screenshot here in the lower right, is this like a standard TamperMonkey interface, or is all this like custom? Is this like a custom app that's all in the TamperMonkey code?
That's a good question.
You don't even know, and you don't even
Yeah,
care.
I
So
don't
it's
even
like,
know. Yeah,
that
yeah,
answers
I don't know.
it. I love it. And then I love how
I
you got 57 steps here. I mean, you're automating a ton of stuff in here, but you didn't have to
mhm.
build the code. You're just
Yep,
interacting with Claude. That's fascinating.
yep, and um and over time I just upgraded the logic. It's like, hey, you need to actually have two different workflows for if this is a case with one type of item in it or a case with multiple different SKUs inside it. That's a complete, like the data is the same, but just the layout of the website, the way it flows from one page to the next is different. So I had to take that into account, but that was super easy. I just said, hey, it's in this order if there is sub items, and that's it. And it figured it out very quickly. And another cool thing is, like, if for whatever reason, and this is why I think, like, in this case it's superior to like truly like full automation, but you can click forward and back to like move forward and back through the steps without actually executing them. So if, like I said, the website's very buggy, so um, I still kind of have to watch it to make sure that it's actually entering properly. Um, and that's not a problem with the app. It's 100% the website that is like this, because it happens when it's manual as well.
That was another
But
thing I was wondering. Yeah, if the bugginess still persists or if your timing delays solved it. Sounds like it still does encounter bugs sometimes.
yeah, there's really nothing for it that the LLM could do other than I did two things. One, for when I have it in run mode, I had, kind of pessimistic timers, and the timers I've like tuned for different pages, like the basic overview page is pretty responsive. That can, it's like half a second. And then the page where you edit the hierarchy of a case with more than one item, that is super laggy. I'm not joking. The timer is now 13 seconds, because anything less, uh, going from one text field to the next might not save the previous one. Um, but then the last problem is, there's also like a compliance page where it asks questions like, does this contain PFAS? Does this need hazardous material, protections or whatever? Or does this need temperature handling? And we make plants, so the answer is always going to be no for all those questions. But there's no mass update, so for literally every single item, I need to click like 25 no checkboxes. So that was the very first thing I thought, oh, this could be automated. Just click every single no on the web page. That was a big one. Um, but that was also one where there was a like a 5% chance any given radio button wouldn't actually save, no matter what timing you did, no matter if it was manual or automatic. So eventually, I just added a step at the end to go back to that page and click no again, so that I built in its own redundancy, so that because I because the basic workflow is, I would start doing it, and then every time I come upon a step that wasn't automated yet, I would think, can I automate this? And eventually that included the step where I go back to the compliance page that I already did and recheck the random, 5% that didn't get saved. And so now that's just part of the workflow. So I've actually kind of minimized, even with the bugs, AI has helped me kind of minimize the tedium of addressing those.
And so when you run this thing, it sounds
Mhm.
like you still watch it just in case it encounters a
Yeah,
bug.
ideally, it's very, very accurate. The reason I watch it is not because uh, the it like enters anything in the wrong field. It never does that. It's more because there is a theoretical $1,000 fine for getting something wrong, and the data I input is not always 100% correct. So I still need to watch it and make sure that, uh, that I'm not like entering, you know, for example, a description that has abbreviations for like a customer facing field or something, because that's a no-no. But sometimes that kind of thing slips through in our own data. So I have to watch it, you know. theoretically, I also specifically made it so that like it won't actually do the final submission. It'll instead just have
That's
a
what I was
yellow.
wondering. Yeah, so it
Yeah,
sounds like you're not having to watch it through the process. You just have to watch it once it gets to the final submission. You just do a final review.
yeah,
Okay.
exactly. And then yeah, so I can either sit there and literally watch it like like a movie, and then I know it's correct, or I can come back to it, stand up and come back to it and double check all the data, which is pretty quick.
Which sounds
Um,
much probably what
yeah,
you actually do, right? You get up and go do
right,
something and then you come back. Yeah, item after item.
right.
Okay. So
So yeah,
I love that. It sounds like you had to deal with like a crazy complicated website, but you worked through the details, and that probably gave you a lot of confidence to be like, hey, I can basically use this on any web app. And so
hmm
to me, I would think dealing with the Acumatica user interface would be a lot more pleasant. And what really hooked me initially when we were, I don't even remember now if we were chatting in Discord or email or what, I
yeah,
don't remember.
you're,
But what
you're talking
hooked
with
me
Michael. Yeah,
is the
my coworker.
idea of basically using this as an import scenario, like to do, because import scenarios are kind of a pain to write, and sometimes there's things you can't do. And so, are you
Yes,
at the point where you're like, hey, I think I can sort of use this as a more advanced import scenario in Acumatica because I have the confidence that I'm going to be able to handle any type of weirdness that Acumatica might throw at me?
yes. Getting this to work with Acumatica is like it would be way easier than this messy website. It's much more rigid. It's much more in your control. It's a lot less buggy. Uh, it's just, you know, all it's doing is like clicking on links and clicking on text fields and entering, entering data, like just like a through a virtual keyboard essentially. And the reason and the challenge is on this specific website stem almost entirely from either the UI, which is a bit over engineered, or the back end just kind of failing in one way or another.
So,
And you wouldn't
have you
really have
tried that
that.
yet? Like, do you have any Acumatica use cases you've tried this on yet?
So I did do like some like basic tests to make sure like it works at all, and it does. And I do have a use case in mind. I was hoping to actually get that up and running, but then there was some like PTO and then some scheduling conflicts, and it didn't happen. But basically, excuse me. But basically, um, we're excited to automate this workflow for another employee. That's basically like a multi-page import scenario, right? They have to um, they I'm not like super I haven't sat down with them yet, but my understanding is they need to like import some data onto one page, which will always necessitate then creating a transfer, which will then necessitate creating a new thing on a different page, and it's always the same steps and it's always the same data, but you're doing it uh, you know three times through the just manual user interface, and you can't really uh, and and this is something a different employee like tried tackling with import scenarios, but it doesn't really support workflows across web pages
Totally with you. Yeah,
yeah,
that's
yeah,
exactly the use case I was curious in. So I love that you have a real world one that you can tackle because
yeah.
yeah, import scenarios are good on one screen, but when you start crossing screens, that's when they break down, and that's when you have to go to the
Mhm.
workflow engine in Acumatica. But the problem with that is you have to deploy it with a customization project, which means you now have to have a dev environment to work in. And once you have the finished product, you do it in a you deploy it off hours, right? And I really
Yep,
like scripting solutions because you can just work on them during the day and you don't even need a dev environment as long as you're not doing
yep,
anything crazy.
yep. And
So
then
that's,
you have
yeah, I love
to
that.
maintain that. Other people are going to see the customization, wonder what that's for, and when this is just this one little tiny thing that one employee does like once every other week, but it takes up like 2 hours or 2 or 3 hours of their time, so it's and it's mostly just kind of rote. So that's what made me think it's a good candidate for this sort of automation. Is it's not even like work that's being done, like cerebral work, just kind of rote clicking on buttons to make it work with our specific setup. So why not
Love
automate
it.
it?
No, love it. Yeah. So I love hearing the backstory on this episode of like how you arrived at where you're at, because I'm behind you on the journey, and I just love hearing how people ahead of me are uncovering use cases and how they're applying things. And
Hmm.
so, I would love to do a future episode if you'd be up for it after you do this use case in Acumatica, where we just specifically hone in on TamperMonkey in Acumatica as a replacement for an import scenario and workflow engine,
Hmm.
with that one use case. I'd love, if you'd be up for it once you have it all nailed down and get some screenshots with non-proprietary data and walk through that flow.
Yeah,
I would love to
I,
see it,
I
but
I'd
sorry,
love
go ahead.
to. Yeah, I'd love to do that. I'm excited for how this project is going to turn out. I was hoping to have it done by now, just for this episode, but it just didn't happen.
No, I don't think it was needed. I think this episode was
Yeah.
perfect for like giving the backstory of like why we think this solution will perform well at scale, because you
Hmm.
dealt with it already on this nightmare website. And don't say the customer name, but I'm sure this is not
Hmm.
unusual with big box retail, Walmart, Target, Home Depot, whoever it is. And there's a ton of companies who deal with these big box vendors. So these
Hmm.
kind of portals are not unusual. And you've proved that this technique will work on that. So we're very confident that's going to work on a much more modern web application with Acumatica. So
Hmm.
I love the backstory on it. So then I think that's this episode.
Hmm.
We wrap it up
Yeah.
with that. But yeah, no,
Yeah.
I would love to then
Yeah.
on the
And
next
and
one hone in on it.
and one more takeaway, something I think that's worth highlighting is basically I'm not doing that much more than like talking with almost like a colleague, walking them through the process. So I don't necessarily need to speak in terms of, oh, now we need, a static array to, store this data and that whatnot. I'm literally just describing what I am doing as I am doing it. And then that is the context that AI uses to make the code that it needs to do. And sometimes it can like ask follow-up questions or whatever, but it's not a huge uh, it's not something that you need like a huge amount of expertise in, and it you just explain your workflow in English, and then it guides you through the process.
Quick time check, by the way. I'll take
Yeah.
as much time as you can give me. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm going to keep asking you the questions. You be the one who's like, I'm ready to wrap it
Oh,
up.
no worries. I have no other commitments today. I have the day off, so
Well, yeah. So I'll let you be the one to be like, yeah, I need to go.
oh yeah,
So
no, go ahead,
when you
ask
bring
away.
that up, it reminds me of what has been my absolute favorite thing. I've only been getting into this AI stuff since January, but what has been absolutely my favorite thing is, as a computer worker for decades, I feel like I have handcuffs on me that handcuff me to my desk.
Hmm.
And what has been my absolute favorite thing just this year since I started working with it is now I'll go for walks, and I use a voice dictation app called Whisper. Are you using that at
Hmm.
all?
No, I yeah, I don't use voice
I've
dictation
mentioned
very
it
much
before. I'll
except
put
on
it
my
up here
phone.
on the webpage. I've got you can get a month free and simultaneously give me a month free with this ogforums.com/WISPR. And I really like it. Like, as it's just a really good voice dictation experience. And I got it initially for the desktop because like I had some kind of voice dictation on my Android phone, but I had nothing on my desktop. The standard Windows, it's like Windows H is the shortcut. Like, it was very underwhelming experience for me. And
Hmm.
so anyways, I went looking for voice dictation on desktop, found this Whisper, started using it. I've been using it about 4 months now. I love it so much that I then started using it on my phone, and it's like way better than the experience on my phone. So like I can just dictate a whole thing and it'll put the periods in, it'll put the commas in, it'll even like do a bullet point when it thinks I'm doing a bullet point list. And what's different about it compared to your native phone voice dictation is it doesn't do it as you're talking. So like if you pull up your native phone dictation and you
Mhm.
try to dictate a text message, you'll see it start to type as you're talking, right? But what
Mhm.
Whisper does is you can just talk for a few minutes and then it sends the entire thing to the LLM. So it's dealing with the entire context. And that's how it's able to be a lot smarter about it and like flesh out a nice looking piece of text. And so because of Whisper, like I'm finding that, if I was writing an email, I would actually go back and look at it. But I'm to the point 4 months in with Whisper where I have enough confidence that whatever Whisper did, whatever it got from my voice dictation is good enough for the LLM. And I know there's voice dictation mode in the LLM, but I personally like talking to it and then reading back from it. So I don't really like the voice dictation mode when it comes back to me. But
Yeah.
anyway, so I'll use Whisper to like send the text off, and it's always good enough. And so where I'm going with this is my favorite thing about it has I feel like the handcuffs are off now. I can go for a walk and get legitimate work done. And it sounds to me like that's what you're describing here, where your now interface with the computer is becoming much more voice and less me having to type on the keyboard. Am I hearing that right?
Um, well, for this particular project, I mostly like typed. I didn't use voice, though I am actually interested in this because I am noticing I am frustrated with my phone's dictation, because it's like you said, it types it right away and then it'll like go back and retroactively correct stuff like half a sentence later, and oftentimes that correction is wrong, and kind of a me specific problem, but I've been talking a lot of like Pokemon with my friends lately, and my default keyboard dictation doesn't know the names of of the Pokemon, so it 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 gets it wrong. I might actually have to try this out. Does it work on just like any app? You don't have to open
Yeah.
the app
Yeah, it works
specifically.
just like your keyboard. And they had a I just put it up on the screen again. They have a an iPhone app that's been out for a while. The Android app, which I'm using, I believe is still in beta mode, but I've been using it for probably a month and a half at this point, and I mean, I haven't really found it to be very buggy at all. So yeah, it's been a great experience. And yeah, to your point about like custom names, you can even do I turned off the auto add to the dictionary. Like it can just auto add stuff to its dictionary. I turned that off, but I'll put
Mhm.
in specific things when I want to, like Acumatica, and that's where you put your Pokemon names in there. And
Yeah.
that way it'll pick up things, capitalize them correctly. And then you can also, someone actually on a previous episode, because I bring this up frequently on the podcast,
Mhm. Yeah.
it's funny how many people are like, yeah, I've been using it. Someone taught me about, there's something called snippets, I think they're called, where now basically you can, when you say a certain phrase, it will turn it into whatever text you want, right? So just think of it
Mhm.
like a keyboard shortcut, but a voice shortcut. So you can even do that kind of thing. So like whenever I say, here's my email address, it could then write out a whole blob of text, or here's my Calendly link, it would put in the
Oh, that's
URL,
handy.
whatever, something like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, it can do that kind of stuff. And it's one of those things where it's just a pleasant experience, kind of like I showed you this StreamYard platform and how it's just a pleasant experience.
Mhm.
They just nailed it. They did a really good
Yeah.
job, and they just hone in on voice dictation. And what I will say this, for it sounds like you're heading in that direction, but I will say that the biggest challenge for me, and I think you will likely encounter this, is not the technology, it's your own brain. And it's
Mhm.
being able to now produce thoughts that don't go through your fingers, but go through your mouth. And it might
Mm.
sound funny to describe it that way, but that has been a real challenge for me. And I think it's taken me years, not think, I know it's for me personally taken me years to get to the point where I'm comfortable turning a thought into something audible rather than
Mhm.
something that goes through my fingers on the keyboard. Because for years, blogging, participating in forums, etc., like I could only think at the keyboard and produce thoughts that way. And I think it's the podcast here specifically that's made me at least comfortable turning thoughts into voice. And so I'd be curious, your experience, if you find that's the case. Like, you got the tech now, but
Yeah.
yeah, what's it like in your own brain? Can you actually translate those thoughts into voice, or do you find yourself wanting the keyboard because that's how you
Yeah.
produce thoughts?
No,
Yeah, be
I can empathize with that. I grew up on, MMOs and whatnot, so like I'm very very used to like typing, quickly, and sometimes, you've probably noticed this during the podcast, I say a lot because that's not my primary communication, and I've tried like AI voice modes, like not the dictation software, but like the voice mode from ChatGPT. And on the one hand, like it's way better at, you know, context and uh, non-standard words like, Pokemon names. But it's also, like you said, limited in many ways. So this is actually kind of cool. I'm gonna check out this. You said Whisper. That might be something I just check out because I know it is, from my experience with, the native voice mode with like ChatGPT, that it understands you really well. Like that wasn't my problem with it. It was just at the one, the aggressive usage limits. This was like more than a year ago, but by the time it was very low usage limits even for paid plans. And then that was the other thing you mentioned, it doesn't read it back to you in text. There's no log of it, or at least there wasn't at the time. So it can be hard to like do iterative work of any sort, So it ended up being more like a fun like toy than anything useful. But again, I haven't dabbled in that aspect in like well over a year. So if this, I'm looking at the website now. This is actually really cool. I'm gonna check this out.
Check it out. I love it. Yeah,
Yeah,
use that. If you use that link, you'll get a month free, and you give me a month free. And
that's a
I'm
win-win.
curious. You mentioned the ChatGPT voice interaction. I've done that too. I'll still use it when I'm driving. Sometimes that's the only use
Mhm.
case I have for it right now. But I'm curious. Do you find that one of the most annoying things about it to me is, like, I can't finish a thought. I have to talk really fast without any breaks. Otherwise, it jumps
Yes,
in and cuts me off. Do you find that?
exactly. And
Yeah.
with driving specifically, it would also like air out, or like, I drive by, like a Wi-Fi that it wanted to connect to, and then the connection would terminate, and then that would require me fiddling with my phone, which really defeats the purpose of like, safely interfacing with my phone if I'm messing with it anyway. So I just stopped using it while driving. But yeah.
But yeah, the cutoff part is a real pain point with it, and that's the other thing I absolutely love about Whisper. Like, even if
Mhm,
with your native phone dictation, it'll kind of turn off if it doesn't hear you after a while, right? But with
mhm,
Whisper, like, I can sit there and be absolutely silent, go on a walk in the forest for 30 seconds, 60 seconds while I'm thinking about something, and it just sits there and waits. And then it picks up when it's recording the whole thing, and then it passes off the whole audio recording. It actually records it locally, so it's
mhm,
reliable. That way, if it glitches out when it sends it to the cloud, it can still resend it because it's got it locally. So
mhm,
you're basically just recording a voice memo and sending it to an LLM, but with a
mhm.
pleasant interface, right? So yeah. Anyways, try it out. But I
Yeah.
bring it up because when you start talking about how what it's sounding like is it's sounding like you just sort of become the interface at your company between the LLM and the real world. And I think we experienced this, decades ago with Google. I think I remember when Google it first came out, late 90s. I guess I wasn't really in the working world until early 2000s, but even at that point, I definitely picked up where there were people at companies who were just the people who knew how to do a Google search. And people would
Mhm.
go to that person in the company, and they didn't know how to do it yet. So there was a person at the company who was the interface to the Google search world, right? And then you had
On
that
it.
website of let me Google that for you, where like
Yeah.
eventually like you can do this yourself, right?
Yep. I
but
remember that.
and I think we're at a similar time now where like people like yourself are the interface to the LLM for your company, right? And so as you're going around and you're now working with people on problems, I'd be real curious to see it, if this Whisper app helps you out to basically be now the voice dictation into the Claude chat app on your phone, knowing that it's all captured, and then you can go back and review it at your desktop. But you're able to at least read the first few sentences of the first couple paragraphs in Claude's response, and it already get the conversation going in the LLM. I'd be real curious. It just speaks to that whole taking the handcuffs off you and allowing you to roam around in the business a lot more comfortably than you used to be able to.
Yeah, that's exactly my experience right now. Everyone's like heard of AI, but the interest of any like one individual at our company, shoots way up once they actually see, oh, this can help me with my work. And now I'm the guy that people like come to like specifically ask, can Claude do this? You know?
Yeah,
So yeah,
yeah,
it's exactly my experience. Yeah.
and it's fun. Yeah,
It
it's
is fun.
enjoyable. Okay, we actually have a comment here. I'll read it off. So Caden's got a comment. Caden's been on the podcast before. Actually, we just tried out the voice hangout in Discord yesterday, just a private voice hangout. But he says Meta's new mind reading technology is a system called Brain to QWERTY. That's a cool name. That decodes brain activity into typed sentences. It captures brain waves and uses AI to translate intended movements into text. Cool and creepy. That's interesting. Didn't know about that. Let's check out Brain to QWERTY. Learn more about that.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
interesting.
BCI's brain computer interfaces, those are very interesting. I'm actually I saw I've been following this, or I used to follow this one guy. He was like a German researcher who was interested in BCIs with regards to gaming, like especially with like accessibility, like like maybe you don't have two fully functional hands, like
Yeah.
could it like you can there's already like adaptability devices where you can use eye movements or some other uh, uh, a different appendage or whatever to interface with games. But this guy was interested specifically in BCIs, so that and he had this cool demo where it was like a mod for Skyrim, where in Skyrim there's like three primary
Wait, is that a
elemental
video
attacks.
game? I don't know what that
Yeah,
is.
a video
Okay.
game. Yeah, yeah. So there's like a three different like primary flavors of a magical attack. Fire, lightning, and frost. And normally you like explicitly select the spell you want and then attack with it. But with this proof of concept BCI tool that costs like $8,000, it would instead of selecting a spell and then pushing attack, you would just push the attack button, and then it would like pick up on like patterns in your brain waves and dynamically select the element of the spell. So if you would like think cold thoughts, you would cast a frost spell. And if you would think electrical thoughts, and it would cast a lightning spell. If you think heat, it would cast a fire spell. And it is I have not been able to actually try it myself, but from what I hear, it's kind of a magical experience where you push the one button, but it's a do everything button that kind of reads your mind almost. Like, it doesn't literally read your mind. There's like a training period where you like think cold thoughts for a long while, and this tool would somehow like start recognizing patterns in brain waves whenever you would do that, and then it would remember that for you specifically. Oh, this is what his brain waves look like when he's trying to cast a cold spell. I'll remember that, I guess. So I,
That's
I thought that
super
was super.
interesting.
I thought that was super fascinating. I'm very interested if there's additional headway. What is this called? Brain to QWERTY. I'm gonna look that up as well.
I'll put that one in the related links as well. Yeah, I think for me personally, it's still mostly in the creepy realm of my brain, and somewhat in the cool part. I like having the noise of actual audio instead of super silent interactions, but it's fascinating. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, I can understand the creepy aspect, especially with like meta involved,
But it
but
also
no,
depends on the person, right? Like you
yeah.
pointed out, like someone who can't even talk, right? That's going to be open the doors to them to a whole world that they didn't have access to. I mean,
Mhm.
there's always, whether or not it's interesting to you personally, there's always some audience for this kind of tech, right? So yeah, it's really
Yeah,
interesting to know about.
yeah. No, that's super fascinating.
So this use case, so yeah, I think that'd be a great next episode. This use case of basically multi-screen import scenario without having to go to the workflow engine, and how it plays out. I'm also curious with the, going with the web browser. So you talked about auto hotkey a little while
Hmm.
back.
Yeah.
I've used that personally. Yeah, I describe it as like a macro for your desktop instead of just a macro confined to Word or Excel. It's a macro for your entire desktop. It's great at
Yep.
like doing clicks and stuff. I think we chatted a little bit about this in the Discord, but I'll ask you here on the episode. Differences between what you found auto hotkey and this TamperMonkey browser plugin. Like what made you lean into TamperMonkey instead of going down the auto hotkey route?
Um, well, it was at Claude's suggestion actually, but the basic idea is, auto hotkey, you're like it still needs to know where to click because there's a lot of dynamic menus and stuff. So I can't just give it like pixel coordinates or something. So it needs to read the website somehow. And if it's going to do that, then you might as well just do it all in the browser anyway, is kind of the logic behind that. And then
That makes sense. It's
with
like it has
with
more
the
tooling,
yeah,
right? Like whereas
yeah,
auto hotkey is kind of just like a hammer that bangs on the web page, the
yeah.
TamperMonkey is much more sophisticated about how it navigates the UI elements.
Yeah, I've used AutoHotkey before, like way before AI was a thing, but that was for very static web pages that would literally never change, um, and it was for like 10 buttons total, and with predictable pixel coordinates. I know you can do like more advanced stuff than that, but this was just the 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 tool that made sense for this situation, with the added benefit of it was also able to inject its own interface into into the website itself, so that you can you know have a in tool navigation or in browser navigation of your own tool, and you didn't have to like load the tool separately and then go to the website and hook it up or anything. The script just doesn't run unless it's at the exact URL where that's the starting point, and then it loads automatically.
Oh, I didn't realize that part. I
Yeah,
love the screenshot, by the way. Thanks for showing that. Like pictures worth 1,000 words. I didn't
yeah,
realize that. So like when you navigate to that URL, that little thing in the lower right pops up automatically, you're saying?
yep,
Interesting.
yep. And it's injected into the HTML of the website, so it's like part of the website essentially.
So then talk to me about like the plugin itself. I know that sometimes when you go out to a plugin store, there's security concerns there. How'd you get comfortable with that? Also, like talk to me about pricing. Yeah, talk to me about the whole like deployment of using a web browser extension, challenges, pricing, concerns with security, etc.
So TamperMonkey didn't cost me anything. It's on the Chrome web store. There was I did do a few uh, alterations with security in mind. So like initially, the script would like pull from a library like at runtime, and I didn't like that idea from a security standpoint. Like it's probably fine. It's probably not a big deal, but just to cross my t's and dot my i's, I changed it so that instead, can we just download the library, and then I just hard code like a url for my local machine into the script, and so that it can read from the library instead of having to go to some library that I don't manage. And
So it's kind of the difference between your logic living in the cloud versus living on your machine.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So
Okay.
yeah, and then I also made sure that basic uh, security oversight. You got to tell in the settings for the script within TamperMonkey, have it only run on this website, and it gets no permissions anywhere else. So there is some common sense security practices, but yeah, that was important when I was making this, is that it is also portable, and doesn't you know doesn't dynamically access any website that I don't control or anything like that, and it doesn't have read access to anything that it isn't this specific website. Not that like, I can see the code that it outputs. I know it's not going I know it's not randomly sending data to some who knows where or anything stupid like that, but still, that's a good question. It's good to be mindful of you know how your data is actually being handled.
Yeah, and a lot of times for a smaller company, it's not as big of a deal. Yeah, as long as it works, as long as there's not anything glaring. Like I just did a quick Google search. I'll put that up on the screen.
Mm,
Just where is it headquartered? I'm always when I look at a
mm.
tool, I basically am just wondering if it's out of China or not out of China. So at least this
That's
one,
fair enough. Yeah.
Google thinks it's doesn't have a corp formal thing, but the creator Jan Biniuk is based
Mhm,
in Germany. So at least we got a Western Hemisphere tool. So I think I'm comfortable
mhm.
enough there.
Yeah, I
But
don't have auto update on the extension itself. Just for
okay,
that.
okay.
And yeah, just because I'm very big on if it's don't broke, don't fix it. Then
Yep,
so
yep. I'm
so it's
totally
not.
with you. Yeah, you don't want the update to kill a script. Yeah, no, that makes sense.
Yeah,
That makes
yeah,
sense.
and it's not like it's an OS or a web browser where you really want like the latest you know security updates at all times, because
Right, right.
this is like it's interacting with a website, but the script itself is offline.
Super interesting. Yeah, I was also reading up on it that it basically can allow you to, in the same way that I'll put your screenshot back up, that it can add that little thing in the lower right hand corner. It can
Mhm,
also do that to any app. So like my understanding of it is it could add buttons on an Acumatica screen for you. And since you can tie it to the
mhm.
URL, like you pointed up, it will just basically like a layer, it's like a JavaScript layer on top of any
Yep.
existing web app. You can sort of build your own app on top of the app, which is super interesting.
Yep. Yeah, you could, if you had a repeatable use for it, you could just have it set up so that whenever it accesses this specific screen, load to this specific script, and then you have your own, control panel that does what you need it to do.
And it sounds like right now, then you're just using it for you. But when you get to this next use case in Acumatica, you'll now be using it for someone else. And that's
Yep.
where you might wind up going to the library concept because you'll want a way to be able to develop a TamperMonkey script and deploy it to someone else's computer. Do you know how you're going to accomplish that yet?
Um, well, basically how like this one is currently set up, it's literally just one library it needs, and it's free to download, and I downloaded it and I put it in a fixed position, and then I hard coded where it was in the script so they can look it up. If it's for this particular use case I'm thinking of, it's just one person, and they're pretty tech literate anyway, so I don't think I need to do anything crazy. I would just give them the library, tell them to put it, uh, you know, in one folder down from like the C drive or something within its own folder, and then they're off to the races.
And you might even be able to do like the SharePoint / OneDrive route, right? Where you hard code it into the OneDrive
Yeah,
folder on the computer, and
actually,
that way, if it's a
that's a good
shared
point.
folder, you could just drag in your latest TamperMonkey script into OneDrive, and it would now still locally pick up the same
Yeah,
script, right?
why not? That might
I
be a good
love
idea.
solutions like this. I love solutions like there's one that I'm still jazzed about, but haven't actually done it. But same concept of basically giving. Actually, I'll throw it out to you. I've thrown it out to multiple people. Some like it, some don't. I'm curious your thoughts. It's in the same kind of a way of thinking, but when you pull data out of Acumatica,
Hmm.
do you pull data out over OData at all, like for Power BI or anything like that?
Um, let's see. Is OData, is that like that can refresh like Excel downloads
Yeah, you
automatically?
can
Yeah, yeah,
connect it
yeah,
to
yeah.
Excel or like
I
Belixo
use that.
uses OData.
Yeah, I use that all the time. Yeah.
You do.
In fact,
Okay,
that
so
yeah.
have
In
you
fact,
ever encountered? Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Keep going.
as I was going to say, in fact, it's actually part of another AI Python thing I did, where just one of the steps, actually, no, it's the email price mismatch thing I told you about. One of the steps to make sure that the it's up to date is I have this input Excel file that says, here's all the the purchase orders from such and such. Can you please hit refresh all so that it has the latest date and then do your check? So yeah.
Perfect. Yeah. So you're using it in that workflow. So I'm curious if you run into at any point yet where OData either just takes a real long time to refresh or actually times out because the data set is too large.
Um, no, it takes like a good 30 seconds to a minute, but I've never had it like fail or anything.
Okay. Yeah. So, and that makes sense. Like your company is not huge, so you're not dealing with maybe millions of records over your OData pulls. But I've seen companies, more and more Acumatica is getting into the bigger and bigger companies. Just a natural
Mhm.
evolution of any ERP system. But when you start getting into millions of records, OData starts to time out. I mean, even hundreds of thousands, it'll start to time
Mhm.
out, depending on how wide the set is. And so when you get into that, you have to start dealing with differential refreshes, which is
Mhm.
basically what Belixo does natively, where it only pulls in the data since the last time you refreshed it, and it uses the last modified date time field, which is on pretty
Mhm.
much every DAC in Acumatica. And so the challenge is, as soon as you get into that world, you now need a place to store the data, and then you
Mhm.
typically spin up a SQL database, and now you got a data warehouse, and you got to data type the columns. And the solution I've been wanting to build is, uh, in theory, it's doable. This is just from some chat GPT interactions, but you would take the idea would be to go straight from OData to a CSV file. And the
Mhm.
challenge with that is a CSV file, you can't add a primary key onto. So you can't
Mhm.
do an upsert into a CSV because it doesn't know what the primary key is. But if you used a Python script to load the CSV into pandas
Mhm.
temporarily, add the primary key in there, then do the upsert, then write it back over the CSV, you'd essentially have a mechanism to do an upsert into a CSV. And why I thought of this is, at the end of the day, it's just a CSV file in a OneDrive folder. And Power BI is really good at reading data right out of a OneDrive. So now you could have this Python script that's just running on some cloud serverless architecture somewhere, just writing the output to the CSV file once a night, but it automatically syncs up over OneDrive and Power BI picks it up from there, or Excel or whatever. And so, anyways, these basic tools of a CSV file, of a OneDrive sync, or something like that. I love when these come into play because I just think they work really well without you having to spin up some complicated architecture.
Right. I'll have to keep that in mind because the kind of OData refreshes I do usually don't go more than like 70,000 rows. But if that's a problem that starts happening, I might have to keep that in mind.
Yeah, at some point you'll get there, right? You amass
Yep.
enough years worth of data,
Yep.
you'll get
Yep.
there.
Our database is only growing.
Yeah. Well, hey, I think I'm actually be the one to say I gotta
Right.
I gotta take off. Any
Okay.
other
Yeah.
like final thoughts? I've really enjoyed geeking out on
Yeah,
this
me
stuff. Like
too.
this,
Thanks for having me. This was great.
and yeah, I love putting stuff out there that otherwise does not exist, right? These kind of conversations normally don't see the light of day, and so I love putting it out there, and then Google can crawl it and all that kind of stuff, so I love
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, that's good. I'm almost embarrassingly proud of this because it was it was a huge task that I was given, and I was able to not only like find a permanent solution, but I was able to do it faster than it would have taken me to to do it even once. So I'm glad I get to share that off just a little bit.
And I just think it has a tremendous amount of potential. So yeah, I'd love to have you back on after you do this Acumatica
Yeah,
multi-screen use case and
yeah.
find out
I'd
how that
I'd
went.
love
And yeah,
I'd love to report back with how that goes. I see absolutely no reason why it wouldn't work exactly how I'm imagining it. Basically, just the screenshot, but in Acumatica and across screens, like it's already doing a harder job, frankly. So I can't wait to bug my employees and say, hey, this really tedious thing you do every week. I bet we could make it a little bit less tedious. People always appreciate that. So
sounds super fun. Well, I think what I'm going to do is I'll ping you on Discord to get your email because I don't even have that. We've only communicated on
yeah.
Discord. And then what I'll do, I like scheduling, like I just use my Gmail and schedule an email off to you in a couple months to check in because otherwise I'll forget. So I'll do that and then we could follow up that way about a future episode.
Okay. Yeah, that'd be great.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, Mackenzie, for giving us 2 hours of your time to talk about super compelling TamperMonkey solution. I think it's, yeah, just got tons of potential. So looking forward to hearing how that evolves for you at your company.
Well, thanks for having me. I really enjoyed sharing, and I hope someone finds it useful. Find their own similar solutions. My parting advice, I guess, would be if you're unsure about AI, just start asking it questions that you like already know the answer to, and then you'll very quickly develop a sense of the kind of thing that it's good at versus what it's not. And then once you have that, you'll start to see solutions to problems as they happen. Like you'll get a good sense of, oh, this is something I don't need to be doing the hard way anymore. So
Awesome. Great parting advice. Love it. And have a
okay.
great 4th of July weekend. Hope you have
Yeah,
some
you
fun.
too. I will. Thanks. All right.
All right. Take care.
Take care. Bye bye.